Hey, what's up? Jason here from Unity3D.College. This morning I got a really great question from a subscriber to my email list, and I just wanted to share the question and my answer to it. So the question, as you can see on the screen, is just that he recently joined a team, and that team has been doing a project. It was already started and in progress when he got on there. And he said there's a lot of framework stuff set up, and the way that it's done is kind of the opposite of what he's used to. So it's the opposite, different coding style, different standards, different way to set up projects completely. And then he just asked if I've ever joined a team or project in a similar situation, and if so, how did I deal with that? How did I learn stuff, and what kind of questions can you ask? And the answer to that first question is definitely. I'd say almost every time I get onto a team, they do things a bit differently. Sometimes it's very similar, just minor differences. Other times they're huge differences. Totally different style for coding, totally different style for project management and architecture, and it's always a little bit jarring at first. Like the first week or so is usually spent just kind of looking through the code, figuring things out, and trying to understand what's in there and why it's in there. And that's probably the hardest part to really get down, is just why things are done the way that they are. Sometimes there's just no good reason for it. Things are just done in a certain way because that's the way that people knew how to do it. They went with this specific framework because they'd used that framework for years or decades, or their entire career sometimes. Other times there are really good reasons for it. So sometimes there's just a big architectural reason behind some decisions that were made that really makes sense, but it's hard to understand at first. So what I like to do is just start off just going through the project and looking at all the code, running it as much as possible, stepping through things and looking at the flow before really trying to build anything or fix anything. That's kind of what I'll do. And while I'm doing that, though, I do like to look for just simple little bugs, so that way it gives me a reason to jump around to different parts of the code and see what kind of issues the project has. Are there bugs, mostly just little typos where somebody forgot something or messed up a math problem or a math equation, or are the bugs bigger architectural issues where suddenly putting in this feature isn't just as simple as it should be and is breaking a bunch of other things, or is just really difficult to get right. So I like to, like I said, just grab a couple little bugs, go through those, try to knock those out while I'm learning the entire system. But you also can't just go into a corner or lock yourself into an office and figure everything out on your own without asking questions and getting help, at least not unless you're John Carmack or some other insane genius. So what I like to do is spend a little bit of time when I'm going through these things, and as soon as I get stuck for maybe 10, 20, 30 minutes, especially once I hit like the 30-minute mark with no progress, that's when I'll start asking questions to the other developers. And I'll ask them, I try to give them very specific questions, especially when you're first starting out there. It can be frustrating if a new hire comes up and they just keep asking very basic, very general questions. But if you have some really specific, good questions, it does help a lot, and you can get really good answers, I think. So I like to just kind of go in there, say, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. I thought I would set it up this way. That's not quite working. So is there a better way to do this in this system? Or is there a setup for this, a recommendation, or is there an example of where this was done that I'm not finding that you can point me to? And usually that turns into a small discussion about how to do how to hook up this feature or this functionality in this project. But it also tends to kind of open it up to a bigger discussion about why things are done that way. Like why are we doing it this specific way versus some other way. Now, you can also get into these situations, like I mentioned earlier, where the code quality at a place just isn't quite up to par, and it's kind of below what you're used to seeing, and things are a bit messy. And in that case, there are a couple things to definitely avoid. The first is, don't just go in there and say, hey, all this code sucks, we should delete it all, let's get rid of it, kill it, and start over because it's all terrible. That's not going to get you anywhere. It's just going to get people irritated with you. It's not really helpful to anybody. There's no benefit. What you can do, and what I like to do, though, is when I see problematic parts of the code or problematic styles or just architecture, I like to just start asking questions and try to figure out, first off, why it was done that way. Is it just a matter of we didn't really know what we were going to do at first, so we just kind of hacked stuff together and we were planning on fixing it up later and cleaning things later, and later almost never comes. But a lot of the time that's the case. The developers know what they're doing, but somebody started something a little bit messy and everybody just kind of got a little bit sloppy and lazy going along with it. Or I say lazy, but really they're just trying to get the thing done and not worrying so much about the future. They're worrying about right now. Now, sometimes, especially with games, it's just a matter of we had to rush to get this thing done for a demo for some specific deadline, or else we weren't going to get money or something bad was going to happen. But then other times it's just a matter of they don't really know the best way to architect or cleanly code their projects, and they just need a little bit of help there. And again, in that case, I've always found that the best way to approach this is just by asking questions. Ask them, hey, why are we doing it this way? Why aren't we using this specific functionality or these design patterns in the project? And if you ask nicely and just kind of, especially if it's something that's relevant to what you're working on or relevant to an existing discussion, in my experience, people tend to open up. They tend to get really happy that you're asking and kind of excited to find out about new possibilities, new ways to do things that'll make their project cleaner and better. One good example of this is just unit testing. A lot of the times, especially for non-game projects, I like to try to push in some unit testing and get people kind of used to the idea. So some companies do unit testing great. I've talked about a couple who do. And then a lot of them just don't do it at all because they're just not yet sold on the value. They don't really understand the time saving that they're going to get out of it, or the bug freeness, I guess. So, like I said, it's good to start with questions. Just ask away, start asking, figure out why they're doing the things, and then if you want to introduce a new technology, instead of just saying, hey, let's use this thing, or hey, let's use this pattern, ask first if they know about that pattern and if they've tried it out before, if they have any thoughts on it. This is very possible that they've tried it out, had issues, didn't use it for some reason, and you may have the answer to those issues. Or it could be a valid reason that it just isn't going to work for their project. But a lot of the time they just didn't know about the option, and when you ask them about it, they start asking more questions back, and things progress and stuff just gets better. So I think I kind of went on a little long about this, but it's a really interesting problem, and it's something that everybody kind of runs into. I see this pretty much every project that I go into. Like I said, it's always a little bit different, and you always have to kind of merge in with what they're doing, and then ideally try to guide them over to better practices if there's room for that. But it's also really important, I don't know if I already mentioned this, but when you start, don't just go in and try to change things. Go in, follow their standards, follow their practices, and keep in line with what they're doing, at least at first, at least for the first couple of weeks. Don't just try to just jump in and change things, because then you'll be the guy that everybody hates that just came in and ruined everything and made everything a pain in the ass. Because while a certain coding style and cleanliness may be really easy for you to understand, it can be confusing if that's not what you're used to. But if you're used to something else and people come in and change it, people changed it and it's ruined and it sucks. So don't do that. Just go in, questions first. Now, before I end this, I did want to mention that I've got a link down in the description for a survey about overtime. I was really curious. I saw a post about this morning, and I was curious to see how much people are actually working overtime in development jobs, in game development, web stuff, and everything else. I've got the existing data right here, but there's not really that many responses. I'd like to do a video on this subject once I get a little bit more info. I'm noticing just throughout the day, looks like another entry just came in, that the values here are changing quite a bit. So if you're interested in knowing about overtime practices in game dev and non-game development stuff, go drop by, fill out the survey real quick, and then I'll do a video on that sometime later this week. All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that little alert button and everything else, and have a great day.